You found the skeleton. How would you tell it's a dinosaur? You personally, how would you decide?
Well, interesting question. I don't know. I'd have to do some research on this.
Hey everybody, welcome to Dapper React 16. Glaciers probably don't exist, which of course is, me projecting that conclusion onto Nate Loper here, who is the former youth pastor who has retained all of the youth pastor energy and is telling us about why the Grand Canyon is great evidence for flood geology and young earth creationism. And I am joined, as per usual, with Vishanti. Vishanti, how are you?
Moisturized, unbothered, in my lane.
Nice.
Thriving while a scene of utter destruction goes on behind me.
Yep. No concern.
Nope.
Or the T-Rex or the Triceratops or the rather anachronistic Stegosaurus that's in the background.
I was gonna say, all these dinosaurs definitely live together at the same time.
Yeah, no.
This is as accurate as a creationist Garden of Eden drawing.
Basically, yeah. This is like that time that, Genesis Apologetics said that the mainstream explanation for dinosaur fossils is that they were all caused by the Chicxulub impactor. All of them. Like, oh, okay.
Okay.
Sure. That's what everyone believes. So...
Also, Mr. Andrat asked if you've met Rider of Dinosaurs.
Oh, so I've online met Rider of Dinosaurs. Like, we've talked before. We don't hang out much. But, we see each other on Twitter and talk to each other every once in a while. So, like, I know who he is. We've talked. I don't know. That's what I've got. I'd call him an acquaintance that I haven't met in person.
I mean, I've met very few of my online friends in real life.
Yeah, that's fair. I'd like to meet more of them. I've met a few people that I've met from YouTube in real life. I'd like to see a few more in person. That'd be nice. Anyway, though. So, what I wanted to say is, first, the title of today, Glaciers Probably Don't Exist. So here's the thing, right? I titled these pretty much based on what the previous episode was about, because I don't know what's going to happen next time. So, sorry about that. However, I wanted to mention last time, when we were talking about the Great Unconformity, which isn't something I really looked into a whole lot. But when he started talking about how there were all these, various clasts in the sandstone at the top of the unconformity, and how that in many cases they were made of the underlying metamorphic and igneous rocks from below the Great Unconformity. He was like, this is probably from the Great Flood. And I said, that looks a whole lot like a glacier. Maybe it's just a glacier. And it turns out that the mainstream explanation for the most likely cause of the Great Unconformity is that basically during the Cryogenian period, which is the period directly preceding the Ediacaran and then into the Cambrian, the Earth was, all the continents were just covered in glaciers that wore them down almost to sea level. And there you go. So, turns out that my hunch of like, hey, why couldn't this just be a glacier? Turns out, no, that's just the standard explanation for what's going on there is like, yes, that was a glacier. Good job. So, it's just sad.
Over 9,000 says glaciers were invented by the Ice Age franchise to help them depict humans as dumber than animals.
Oh my goodness. For those of you who might not be up on that, check out my Jackson with Jackson series where Dr. Charles Jackson said that one piece of evidence of the sinister evolutionist conspiracy to make people believe in human evolution is that the humans in Ice Age couldn't talk, but the animals could. Which... technically it's true that that's an accurate description of the film. However...
So, does that mean The Land Before Time is a documentary?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, all of those different groups of animals definitely live together at the same time. In the same place.
Okay.
Yep. Definitely no nonsense about pteranodons and stegosaurs being separated by, 100+ million years. That's not a thing. Don't worry about that.
What a relief. I'd have to never watch that movie again.
Yes, all Hollywood movies must be 100% accurate or they are worthless.
Right.
Which means there are very few worthwhile Hollywood movies.
I'm pretty sure Martin Scorsese said that.
Did he? Alright guys, so we're going to continue on talking about this Nate Loper fellow, unless we have any more preliminary stuff to get out of the way, Vishanti.
No,
Okay, well, here we go. Here's Nate Loper. And, yeah, going to tell us about Darwin, because if there's one thing that is really critical to modern science, it is the people who first discovered some big thing hundreds of years ago. That's what's key.
Also, you're just shy of 9,000 subscribers, so we need to get at least, like, just under 300 people to subscribe to you.
Yeah, I believe it's 270 something.
278?
Something like that, I'm not sure. I would have to double
check.
Yeah. But like if 280 people did it, then I would get to 9,000. So share this around.
Oh, I want you to be over 9,000.
Well, over 9,000, right. So share this around, and if I get 300 subscribers, then I'll be over 9,000.
Grungevaldi Gurnison says, "God damn it, Dapper, I need to sleep, but this clickbait title is too strong."
Yes, though it was designed to be a little clickbaity, I'll be honest. You know what? Clickbait gets the clicks. That's how it works. What do you want from me? I have to bow down to the will of the internet, and the internet says clickbait titles are a must. But anyway, yeah, let's hear about Nate Loper and what he has to say about Darwin and how dumb it is, because I can guarantee you it's going to be super dumb. So here we go.
So Darwin actually started off, in fact, Darwin was actually more of a naturalist than he was a biologist of anything.
Oh, right. Forgot about that.
Yeah. I rewound a few seconds for the sake of context, and in case anyone isn't aware, biologist wasn't a title in the 1850s and 60s, when Darwin was most active. Naturalist, however, was just a catch-all term for basically anyone who did what they called natural philosophy, which is the thing we just call science.
No, this person was really more of an alienist than a psychiatrist.
My goodness.
There's a deep cut for you there.
Yeah. Yeah, basically, the fact that terminology's changed doesn't mean that Darwin wasn't a biologist. He studied biology. He was a biologist. And, yeah, Fearmonger says drink with the drink emoji. My goodness, if this were a drinking stream and it wasn't just water here, oh, believe me.
What do you think is in my Slurpee cup?
Oh, is there a bunch of vodka in there?
I'm not telling.
Slurpee plus vodka.
It could be lean, you don't know.
That's true, it could be lean.
Because that definitely existed when the, Chicxulub crater was being formed, along with Spinosaurus.
Along with plastic straws and plastic cup lids and paper cups. Also
things
totally
that are
existed.
made from the animals pictured.
Well, not really, but yeah, thematically. Alright, here we go.
But he actually took the ideas of geology and started applying them to biology. Now, just...
Kind of? So
I mean, if Earth old, then animals develop over time?
Yeah, that's what it comes down to. It's like, Darwin knew the Earth was old, because that had been well established by this point.
How old?
Well, so that's actually a question. They didn't know how old. There were varying...
The answer is old as balls.
Well, yeah, there's that. But, like, in a more detailed sense, like, there were various estimates ranging from, like, a few tens of millions of years to, like, a few hundreds of millions of years. And those were mostly based on the idea of things like, well, if the Earth started out molten, because that's what it seems like since it's hot in the center and, cooler on the outside, then how long would it take to cool down? And there were various estimates, and then there were other estimates based on, like, how much evidence strata there was, and then you could use, like, deposition rates to get sort of a minimum, like, how long at a minimum would it take to deposit this much of this kind of rock? So he didn't know the, 4.5 billion years that we have now, but he did know that it was old enough that evolution was reasonable. Also, by the way, guys, my upload to YouTube seems to drop down a little bit and then drop back up, so sorry if we're dropping any frames or the picture quality isn't as good as it should be. I don't know why that's happening. It doesn't normally happen, but there it is.
I love these answers. I'm asking the chat what's in my cup.
There you go.
So we get organic sludge. We get 100% it's lean.
Nice.
And we get an endless void, which it may have actually come from the SCP coffee machine. You never know. And then Skeletor over 9,000 is the winner with Baja Blast.
Nice. I actually had Baja Blast like a couple weeks ago for the first time in years. I was like, what does this taste like? I don't remember anymore. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, that's what it tastes like. Fair enough.
Blast sheep, have you any wool?
Alright, here we go.
For extra credit tonight, anybody in the room tell me where this picture is taken at?
Museum of Natural History in London.
Where did I snap this picture at?
Who cares? That's my cousin. Stop slandering his reputation.
It's true, he is your cousin. Very distant, but it's there. What is it? You share like a great grandparent that was his like great grandparent or something?
I mean, if you really want like the specific relation, I can, pull it up.
Maybe for next time.
I mean, I'll just do that in the background.
Okay.
Natural History Museum in London. Very good.
Oh, I was right. Hooray. It's the place that has a statue of Darwin in their foyer, famously.
Mm.
Shocking. You took a picture of this statue where the statue is. Yep.
Wow.
Checks out. It's like asking someone, it's like taking a picture of the Eiffel Tower and saying, where did I take this picture? And when someone says Paris, you're like, yeah, good job. Yeah, of course you took a picture of the Eiffel Tower in Paris. That's where it is.
So, my common ancestor with Charles Darwin is Edward Pate and Anne Blunt, and they lived in the 16th century. So, there you go. He's technically my 6th cousin, 5 times removed.
All right. There you go.
So there you go. Mm-hmm.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
All right. But how many of your ancestors presided over the execution of Mary Queen of Scots?
I don't know that I have any yet, but I am related to way more presidents than I would like. Which is more than 0. And
hey, William Henry Harrison did nothing wrong.
But I also am related to the Wright brothers, so that's pretty cool.
Nice.
And Guillermo Gonzalez Camarena, who invented color TV, so that's pretty awesome.
Nice. Without that, we would not be seeing this in color.
Yeah. I also have some famous actor relatives, which is neat. A lot of that is stuff that I kind of suspected.
Are you related to Nate Loper, though?
I hope not.
All right, well, let's find out why you hope not with more detail.
So this is the Natural History Museum in London. Anybody ever been there before?
Oh, wait, that's a question we can put in a poll. Okay, starting a poll. All right, have you been to the Natural History Museum in London?
Yes, no, I like turtles.
Yeah, we gotta add that. And this time I'm not gonna have an extra U in turtles.
Turtles.
No, it was turtles.
Turtles.
Yeah, I just added a U because whatever, I felt like it needed more vowels. Who knows? So yeah, there you go, guys. If you've been to the Natural History Museum in London, let me know. If you haven't, let me know. And if you just don't know, but you sure do like those testudines, let me know about that too.
The only museum that I remember going to when I was in London was the V&A, which I quite liked.
Well, I mean, London has some excellent museums for some horrible reasons.
Yep.
Come on a tour with me. My wife is from London. We go back there every couple years, and we lead London Christian tours for a whole week through there. So 25 amazing sites.
Christian tours of London.
This sounds like a nightmare. Any tour of London is already going to be pretty heavy on the Christianity if you're doing a history tour. My goodness. This reminds me of the type of person who thinks that there's Christianity is like a brand name. What kind of music do you listen to? Christian.
Christian.
What kind of coffee do you drink?
Having
Christian
been
coffee.
a musician in a Christian megachurch for 12 to 15 years, I can safely tell you that Christian is a genre because it all sounds like it was produced at the same Nashville studio.
Yeah.
It sounds the same.
At least for contemporary worship music, that's true.
Oh yeah, the chord progressions might vary a little bit depending on whether the composer grew up in an era that he knew of the Police, say, like the band. Or Duran Duran, but other than that, it's all the same. The vocal mix, all of the production values are the same.
Yeah. By the way, Unintrigued Feline asks, am I wrong that Vishanti is related to you, me, and just about everyone in the world in some fashion? I mean, ultimately, yes, but, her relation to most of you is going to be a lot closer than me. I'm a dinosaur.
Yeah.
She's a weird monkey.
Plus, yeah, I'm a great ape, so it's gonna be quite removed.
Yeah. We're talking about like Carboniferous or something for like common ancestor between me and Vishanti.
Yeah.
Whereas we're almost certainly in the Holocene for common ancestor between her and anyone else.
There you go.
Anyway, here we go.
You want to see, plus we talk about church history, we talk about biblical archaeology, and we talk about creation versus evolution, going into places like this Natural History Museum. LondonChristianTour.com, if anybody wants to join us. We invite people all over the world.
London
But as we go
Christian
into here...
Tour.
Yeah.
I'm looking that up.
Enjoy. Sounds terrible.
We see, as you step foot into this Natural History Museum, this is what you see. This is the Great Hall of the museum.
That's pretty cool. I gotta say. That's impressive.
Walk through and look at, there's Charles Darwin, sitting opposite this grand, huge hall, literally on a white marble throne.
I mean, the whole thing is white marble, so yeah, that checks out. It's like,
Not a white marble throne.
what is the point of saying this? What would his ideal material have been for a Darwin statue? And I know his answer is gonna be like, I don't know, dung, because he's a petty jerk, but like, whatever.
Okay, so literally, this is just a tour of London, led by Christians. They're not like going to any kind of specifically Christian sites as a focus. Like, you show up to Trafalgar Square, you're going to go to 10 Downing Street and Westminster, you're going to go to the British Library, the National History Museum, Buckingham Palace, the Thames.
Why would I...
The London Eye, which you could do, Big Ben and the London Eye in the same day. They're literally, right next to each other.
Why would I need a tour like this to be led by Christians?
Right, and then you go to Westminster Abbey, Piccadilly Circus, and I'm like, okay. And then the Tower of London. Now, see, that's what I don't understand. The Tower of London, you could literally throw a rock and hit the London Eye. Why wouldn't you do those on the same day? They're 2 or 3 days apart on their itinerary. I do not understand.
They're padding out that runtime.
I guess so. And I intentionally did not ride the London Eye because if you go up the hill, just slightly north of where that is, you get a bit better view of the city, and it's free.
Theros Rex for $5. Sorry about that. Says, in young Earth creationism, shouldn't common ancestry be true? Since they believe God created everyone, shouldn't God be seen as a literal sky granddaddy? So, the thing with common ancestry is it usually means common ancestry through natural, genealogical descent, which would not make God the literal biological father of everyone, since they don't usually imagine that the creation of organisms by God is through the normal means of mating that those animals go through. God didn't become a clam so that he could spawn with a different clam that he had also become or something, so as to create the clams. Nor did he become, some kind of monkey in order to... Or I guess 2 kinds of monkey? Or 2 different monkeys of the same kind? Yeah, that's what I'm going for. In order to mate. Usually these are seen as sort of miraculous suspensions in which creatures are just directly created by God without biological antecedents to them.
Yeah, and there wouldn't be any common ancestry between humans and any other kind of animal because we were created from dirt.
Right, and so... within those categories of, say, humans as one of those groups of created animals, then yes, there would be common ancestry within that group. Which is why creationists usually say things that bears and dogs and cats share common ancestry, but not with each other, just within those groups. Which is weird, because the same reason that you would say that dogs share common ancestry is the same reason that you would say that dogs and bears share common ancestry, and then that again is the same reason why you would also lump the cats into carnivora. But don't ask questions like that.
Yeah. Don't worry about it.
At best, you'll be told, oh, there's discontinuity. Then you point out, yeah, that's kind of the expectation of evolution if you recognize that extinction ever happens, which, everyone does. And it's just no, discontinuity indicates differences in kind. Even though all it takes to actually show why that's dumb is, a 10-second movie that I already made.
I mean... Terrastrux says, so then God reproduces asexually with unprecedented levels of mutation? Fascinating.
Well, so kind of, because, again, the idea of reproduction indicates creating another being of a similar, that is virtually the same thing as you. Whereas that's not the idea behind the creation of organisms, right? So, and
Counterpoint. Ancient astronaut theorists claim that the alien progenitors of the human race injected their DNA into our ape-like ancestors and created humans.
Yeah, that's true. That is what some theorists say. Guys, in case you want to see more of me, like 4 hours plus of me getting increasingly drunk at how dumb the History Channel Ancient Astronauts are, you can check out my recent appearance on Chesh's channel, where I drank an entire 6-pack as we just went through History Channel clips from Ancient Aliens. By the end, I was so done with it, I was just criticizing their crappy CGI. So, yeah, just giving them like, hey, here's a pro tip on how to make a CGI city out of your crappy $20 assets from Turbo Squid. Which I don't actually know that they were from Turbo Squid. They might have been from, like, you know, one of the other places. Like, whatever. There's only so many 3D marketplaces that are easy to get to. Anyway, here's more of Nate Loper.
The king of this place, the king of evolution, if you will.
No!
No,
There's no such thing as a king of evolution. There's no king of science. There's no pope of science. There's no patriarch of science. Stop.
Yeah. He's there for historical reasons. That's why. No one is sacrificing to Darwin. In fact, actually, here's something. I kind of wish there was more, like, ceremony around Darwin Day, because it would be more fun. Because here's something I agree with C.S. Lewis on, which is to say, he found Darwin Day incredibly boring. Whereas if there were, like, bonfires that people could dance around on Darwin Day, that sounds like a blast. I'm like, yeah, you know what, C.S. Lewis? It does sound like a blast. You're right about that.
Since young Earth creationists can't fathom that things aren't authoritarian like their religion, I would say that we need to make it to where Darwin Day runs with the idea that scientists are the, you know, priests of evolution, and they need to take non-living matter and bless it in the name of Darwin and transmute it into living matter. So, abiogenesis solved! Checkmate, atheists!
Can they wear cool robes while they do it?
Oh, yeah.
Awesome.
They've absolutely got to have cool robes.
And funny hats.
They need to dress like the stonecutters.
Nice. Okay. All right. Deal. Let's start doing that as the new Darwin Day tradition, guys.
Excellent.
All right. Here we go.
I mean, what a telling story that they have set up there. You walk in, and it's designed to be intimidating and imposing. And
is it? I mean, it looks like a pretty much life-size statue at the top of a staircase, or not even at the top of a staircase, at a landing in the middle of a staircase. It's like, if you want to be, like, imposing, look at something like the Statue of Liberty, right? That actually towers over people like an actual colossus. Right. Or even just those somewhat larger, like 1.5 scale statues that you can find all over the place, right?
I mean, I doubt anybody's going into this natural history museum and genuflecting when they, like, pass the statue of Darwin.
I should totally just do that. What do you... Okay, so how do you genuflect if you're not, like... So, like, making the sign of the cross wouldn't make sense, because I'm trying to pretend that this is, like, some kind of weird edgelord Darwinist religion. So what sign do you have to take hands?
Okay, I would turn on my camera to do this, but I'm feeling like a potato today, so I'm not going to do it.
Okay.
But take both of your hands, and you're going to wave them in a... You're going to do little wavy patterns to make a DNA double helix strand in front of your body.
Oh, okay. That's the Darwinist genuflection there. Okay.
Cool. Yeah, but like you'll touch the X to your head, and then to your chest, and then to like your midsection.
Oh, okay. It's just straight down in the line, no shoulders.
Oh yeah, I think you could do your shoulders.
Well, then it looks a little bit too much like the cross.
Head, shoulders,
knees and toes.
Solar plexus, and then like lower torso maybe.
Okay.
Well, you gotta get the whole, like, chakra line up there.
Now we're getting the Darwinist genuflection down. All right. Here we go. Also, guys, whenever you cross the midline of that room, so that you know there's a direct line between you and Darwin, you should also turn to Darwin and genuflect, not just when you're up there.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, here we go.
Here is Darwin, and you're walking through into the hallway of the king of the earth, basically.
Wow. King of the earth! What is going on?
Not just the king of science or the king of evolution, the king of the whole earth. Yeah,
the earth! You see the king of town?
Maybe you're just projecting your views of Jesus onto everyone else and Darwin. I don't know. Maybe.
This is why I keep saying it. Younger creationists cannot fathom a system that isn't authoritarian.
Yeah,
they cannot process it. It is outside their capability of understanding.
Everything must be the way I'm used to it, or it doesn't make sense.
Everything works like Christianity, but specifically
My
evangelical
version.
Christianity.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
Not even just Christianity as a whole. Okay, here we go.
God. The Darwinist genuflection. I just got an idea for that. You have to reenact like the progression of man art. So like you go and you approach. As you approach, you start out low bowed and then you walk upright as you approach it.
I'm glad that we're hammering out. We're finally, hundreds of years later, finally hammering out how do you actually act like a religious Darwinist.
I mean, listen, if Christianity could take a good 2-3 centuries to hammer out some of these liturgical details, why not this one?
Fair point. And actually, I mean, sometimes they switch it up. I don't know if you know, but like, there's an account of the Pope talking to St. Francis and telling him how to make the sign of the cross, and he tells him to make it the opposite direction of the way Catholics make it now. Something happened.
Dun, dun, dun.
Anyway, Too Young to Feel This Old for $5 says, came in late because I'm on vacation. Hope it's been a good stream so far. The kiddos say hi. Well, hi, kiddos. It's great that you're here. And yeah, I think it's going pretty well so far. It's ridiculous, which is what we want.
That username is such a mood.
Yeah, seriously.
That is such a mood.
All right, here we go.
Wow. What a interesting concept, right? There's some intentionality behind that. Well, we go through there.
Yeah, there's intentionality to put up a statue of a famous guy. And Nebulin, who's been a member for 11 months at the level of Amnio, thank you very much, Nebulin, says, I now know my somatic components for my evolutionist cleric. Yes.
Amazing.
Goodness. Nebulin, come up with an evolution domain, and please share that on the gaming, or the D&D channel on my server, please.
Oh, please, that's so good.
Yeah, we need an evolutionist. I actually made a young Earth creationist cleric domain. And one of your cleric powers is that you can spend one of your channel divinity powers to basically get a boost on persuasion or deception checks to get money out of co-religionists. Yeah.
Incredible.
But it doesn't work on anyone else but co-religionists, and only for getting money out of them.
Splendid.
Vandalia 1998 for $5 says, because we hold everything Darwin ever taught in high regard, and none of it ever changed with new evidence. Yes, that's why we all believe that every organ in your body produces little gemmules that contain the information about what that organ is. And then those all combine into some goop that, goes between organisms that then forms an embryo. That's how gemmules work. That's real.
The day that Origin of Species got published, it's like the entire scientific community went, and nothing new will ever be discovered.
Right, time to stop now, guys. We got it. Valkyrie Visions for 99 cents sends a banana. Thank you very much, Valkyrie Vision. All right, here we go.
And we actually fix all that. We go on our London Christian tour, and we go through there, and we kind of compare and contrast creation versus evolution, what creation is, what evolution is, what it's not. And so we go through there, and we have the entire day.
One is scientific. The other one's a bunch of hooey.
Yeah, and so here's the thing, right? There's more than one way to be non-scientific, right? One is just, you're just ignoring large swaths of the evidence to come to weird conclusions. But another one is, which is related, but I think is worse, is where you start with your conclusion. I think that's the worst option for science, where you're like,
very
okay,
science,
we know
much rigor.
Yeah, we know what the answer has to be. So let's just figure out how to justify that. That is
you can ignore everything that isn't that.
Right. That's the opposite of what science is. Science is approaching the world with an open mind, taking a look at the data, trying to figure out what we can say to make sense of the data, testing that, and then just going where the data lead ultimately. You don't start with the conclusion that, oh, well, we know that God created the universe 6,000 years ago and that evolution is a bunch of hooey. If you start there, you're only going to be wrong or right by accident if you're lucky. You have no reason to think you're right.
That's one of the reasons that you can tell that these young Earth creationists aren't doing science, because all of their lectures are in churches.
That is often true, or they're in the lecture hall of the Creation Museum.
Right. It's like, you're not doing this in a proper scientific context. You're not going to publish in actual scientific journals because it's not science.
By the way, Dr. Tapioca Weasel, who's been a member for 10 months at the Diapsid level, thank you very much, Dr. Tapioca Weasel, says, this is a nitpick, but I have not been a member for 10 months at the diapsid level. I've been a member for 10 months and I'm currently at the diapsid level. That's true. I get this intrusive thought every time you say the other thing. So here's the thing. I just go by what it says. And sorry, I just assume that people have been that way. But hey, that just means that I'm accusing you of being more generous than you are. So there you go. Sorry about that, though, Dr. Tapioca Weasel. All right, here we go.
We're talking about all this stuff and really using God's word, the Bible. We start with God's word, and it reveals to us a lot about God's world, right? We start with Scripture, and Scripture reveals to us a lot about science.
That's literally the opposite of how the world works. Science might reveal something about your Scripture, maybe, if you're lucky. That's the opposite is in no way true. You can't use your Scripture to justify your scientific conclusions. That's
I'm
not how it
so
works.
glad that the Bible is telling you about the scientific world of a flat Earth.
Mm-hmm. With a dome.
With a dome.
And where you can get cattle to be stripy by having them mate in front of stripy sticks.
Oh, weren't they sheep, though?
Well, so I'm not sure, because every time I read it, it just says... So here's what I'm guessing, is it's probably, you know, that the hemo word that just kind of means livestock.
Yeah.
So like,
I mean, I could look up whether it says sheep or not. I don't really care right now.
I mean, look, I'm going to go ahead and guess it's actually probably goats, because those are the ones that I'm most likely to find stripes on among sheep, cattle, and goats.
Mm.
But hey, they're all in Bovidae, so, you know, same family.
There you go.
Although creationists actually like to split up Bovidae between Bovinae and Antilopinae, because and actually then they further split up Bovinae to cut out like the sheep and goats into their own separate kind, and their reason for this is like that's kind of how it looks. It's like, oh, okay.
The old argument from looks like.
Yep. They call it the cognitum, which is just it looks like it. The cognitum is just young Earth creationist technical term for pareidolia that we like, as opposed to pareidolia that we don't like. It's
pareidolia we like.
It's amazing.
Oh, the accuracy.
Yeah, the rigor. All right, here we go.
So I have no problem at all walking into museums like this, or like the Field Museum, or this Thursday I'm actually leading a biblical archaeology and history tour to the Oriental Museum down there at the University of Chicago. And so we invite...
Do you pray over yourself before you go in so that you're resistant to the evil spiritual powers of this world that are trying to deceive you and lead you away from the truth of Christ?
I bet he actually does, though. That's the thing. Like, you say that like
it's a joke. Is that rude of me to dunk on him in that very specific manner?
No. Or if it was, I don't mind. Goodness. Also, the Oriental Museum maybe needs a name change.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's really unfortunate.
Yeah, there's not too many places where you should be using the adjective Oriental. It happens occasionally, but not very often.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is too bad, because, I mean, it just does come from, like, the Latin for East. But, like, sorry, but Orientalism kind of ruined it for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, guys.
Hey, humanity, stop being so racist. Maybe we can actually use words then.
Yeah, that
for
would be
more
nice.
Than, like, a little bit of time.
Right, a word who etymologically doesn't actually have any troublesome... Like the etymology is perfectly normal. It's just from Latin for East. But then, yeah, then people had to go and screw it all up.
Stop being racist, humanity.
Right? All right, anyway.
People, in fact, we have a few spots open. If you go to Canyon
It's just an advertisement.
Ministries.
Oh my God.
/events.
Nebulon.
We'll just go find our event.
What did Nebulon say?
Bent Hova Day.
Oof. You know what? If Hoven were in a different kind from the rest of humanity, that wouldn't bother me too much.
Page.
The fearmonger says that they love that and that we should coin that term especially for low-hanging young Earth creationist fruit. They belong to the Hova Day.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. This is just a bunch of Hova Day nonsense.
A few spots open. I'm working with Ted Wright, who leads Epic Archaeology. Some of you guys may have seen or met him around here. He also leads tours down there.
Ted Wright.
So,
boy, was I wrong.
Unfortunately, I don't have that clip loaded up.
Oh, darn it.
I know.
So we're doing a biblical archaeology and history tour through the Oriental Institute Museum this Thursday, which is my other big passion, geology and archaeology.
So I feel like from
Too
the
bad
name
you're not
of...
really good at it. Sucks,
Yeah.
man. You could be a good scientist.
So I've never been to this museum, so I'm guessing it's like Middle and Far Eastern artifacts. Is that... If anyone's been there to the Chicago Oriental Museum. Let me know if that's what that is, because it's what it sounds like. Which I guess would make sense as if you wanted to lead like a thing about like archaeology from Bible times.
I was gonna say I've got a bunch of friends that live in Chicago that could probably go check it out if you
My condolences to them.
Right, God. One of the worst mistakes I've ever made was going to Chicago in November. Don't ever do that.
One of the worst mistakes I made was ever just going to Chicago in the first place.
The Baha'i Temple's pretty cool, though.
Look, I'm not saying there isn't cool stuff in Chicago. I'm just saying it's not worth getting to them.
Okay.
You have to go through the rest of Chicago to get there. Carrie Bronson for $5 says, by a certain definition, every word out of their mouths can be considered an advertisement. It's all to generate support for their organizations. Yeah, that's true. Although it's usually not as blatant as just, we still have some openings for this upcoming Chicago trip, guys. Book now. Like, it's usually a little bit more separate from that. All right, here we go.
Tell you what, best job in the world. Yes. So going through the Natural History Museum, you can see devoted to Charles Darwin and to evolution. But we go in there and we say, hey, what does God's word have to say? We can compare and contrast.
Who cares? It's not science.
Yeah. Look, if you want to go to the Museum of the Bible, which is a thing that as I understand it, it's in the United States, just go there. That's fine. It's a perfectly fine thing to have a museum about, is the Bible, right? Important book throughout most of history, has, a lot of roots to various events that actually did occur in history, like, King Cyrus,
Babylonian exile,
and even things like, the Roman occupation of Judea. All that's cool stuff. There's lots of archaeology there. There's lots of history there. You don't even have to believe the particulars of the Bible to find that those periods of time interesting, because they are, independent of whether or not you think the Bible is, from God. Great. It has nothing to do with dinosaurs.
Yeah,
Sorry.
and I mean, again, I've said this before, I like to study the text of the Hebrew Bible, but I'm not going to be like, yeah, it's totally a science book.
Yeah, it's just obviously not. It's virtually impossible to come to that text honestly and then come away thinking, oh yes, this is a reliable guide to the science of how the world works. Because too much of it just doesn't make any sense. You've got like nonsense about genetics, you've got nonsense about a flat earth. That's not how the world is. Sorry, guys. Anyway.
Cambrian explosion that we see around the world,
oh, good.
when we rightfully, truly understand what it is, it's not an explosion of life. Rather, it's an explosion of death.
Oh my goodness.
Why am I not drinking for this? Remind me again?
I quite honestly just took psychic damage from that statement.
Seriously. All right. So this is entirely based on what he was going on last time, where he was trying to claim that there were no antecedents to the Cambrian organisms, and there were no fossils below the Cambrian, which are both wrong. One is even more wrong than the other, because, we have fossils from over 1 billion years ago, because, hey, stromatolites are alive. If you go ask a biologist, hey, what are stromatolites made of? They're going to say, oh, they're made of photosynthetic bacteria. And then if you say, and bacteria are alive or not alive, they'll let you know. The answer is alive. And then we also have Ediacaran animals that, are... We don't know all of the affinities of all the various fossil forms from the Ediacaran period, or the Ediacaran period, or however you'd like to pronounce it. I don't care. And yeah, while they're not all obvious in their affinities, they're pretty good candidates for antecedents to things like mollusks and panarthropods. Like, you might call them panarthropods or something. Actually, it doesn't really make sense. They just be panarthropods. But whatever, you know what I mean. All right, here we go. Although I do like those trilobites. Trilobites are just such adorable little critters. I would totally have a...
man.
If I had
the King of LA.
Wait, what happened?
I don't think you know about this. Okay, this is very regional specific. So Los Angeles has a lot of mountain lions, and a good number of them are being tracked by various animal welfare organizations and scientific groups that, obviously want to keep track of them and monitor their health and their habits and such. There's one lion that was called P22. I know, riveting name. And recently it was rediscovered, after having kind of gone missing for a while, and it suffered some damage. I think someone had hit it with a car, and it was getting kind of old. And they tried to patch him up the best they could, unfortunately, P22 has passed on, and I'm gonna pour one out for P22 today.
Well, rest in peace,
So.
P22. I had never heard of you, but that does sound like a sad story. So
Yeah,
I hope you have plenty of kittens running around there carrying on the legacy.
that's right.
Vandeli 1998 for $5 says the Cambrian explosion had terrible fuel because the explosion took 30 million years. I'd want my money back. Yeah. The fact that it extended, like 30 million by the end of 30 million years, you have most of the various like phyla established, but then it still continues on for like another 20 million years of further diversification, I should say. Like, yeah, that's a pretty slow explosion there, guy. It's kind of not very explosive if you had to watch it in real time.
Yeah. Thing about P22 is that after being hit by a car, they had damage to their eye, significantly underweight, lots of just mounting health issues. So they decided that euthanizing was the better way to go. Because even if you got it patched up, it would just not. They were having like organ failure and stuff like that. So yeah,
that's sad. But I mean,
I know.
I guess getting hit with a car is not like the kind of thing it's easy to just walk away from unless you're a moose.
Yeah, and he looked real emaciated. So, I know that they did what they could and they made him comfortable and all that, but man, it sucks. Hey, P22 is a real one.
I'm not blaming anyone, right? Even the motorist might not be to blame, right? Because animals dart out in front of cars.
Yeah.
So it's probably what I would call a tragedy. Which, by the way, this is a pet peeve and unrelated to anything. Don't call things that were intentional acts tragedies. Call those atrocities. If there's like some kind of shooting or something, that's an atrocity, not a tragedy.
Yeah.
Because tragedies are just, something unfortunate happened. That's too bad. That's sad. It makes us all sad, but like there's no one to blame. You can point the finger and say, this person caused this intentionally. I prefer the word atrocity. And hey, it's just a pet peeve of mine. But
literally P22 is like the most famous mountain lion, like ever.
If you want to if you want to put the news story or Wikipedia article or anything in the chat.
Yeah, I linked the Wikipedia page so people can get a little more historical background.
Oh, okay, yeah, I see that you just did.
Yeah.
And Don Giovanni points out that a moose bit my sister. Thank you for the Monty Python reference. Much appreciated. Actually, I did that in one of my videos where like I did like a Dapper from the past, and I had the entire like subtitles from the opening credits of the Holy Grail, and so many people in the comments were so confused.
Oh my goodness!
I was like, "Oh, you got." But then I recently made a Mr. Renfield reference from Dracula, and a lot of people got that in the comments. So I was very happy.
Okay, good.
That people got the Renfield reference. I basically compared Robert Carter to Mr. Renfield.
Oh, right, I saw that.
Yeah, so, all right, here we go. And if you don't get that right now, go read Dracula. It's not a very long book. It's great.
It's a wonderful example of epistolary storytelling. That is my favorite genre for spooky books, is epistolary form. So, and two of my favorite books of all time are written in that format. Honestly, Frankenstein and Dracula.
Honestly, I think it's one of the reasons I like Lovecraft is because he uses various epistolary formats a lot, too. Oh, by the way, I closed the poll. Have you been to the National History Museum in London? No, 54%. Yes, 24%, which that's pretty impressive. And I like Turtles, 21%, with 66 votes. So there you go. And by the way, guys, do hit like. I am seeing that a fair few of you have not. And here we go.
Let's see. Isa River says, if P22 is famous, maybe his death can trigger a campaign for wildlife bridges. It's really... We have a unique situation out here in Southern California, specifically like LA and Orange County, because we sit at like in a little basin between Santa Ana Mountains and stuff like that in the ocean. So literally you have houses going right up into canyons and hillsides and scrub and stuff like that. So that's why you see coyotes all the time. That's why you see mountain lions, because we are literally living directly in the middle of their house. So there's a lot more open, I guess, terrain out here than people might initially guess, because they're only used to seeing like downtown LA. But right outside that little pocket, it's just mountains and valleys and canyons and stuff like that. So you're going to have wildlife running all over the place. P22 occasionally would start wandering into more populated areas, but that's probably because he was getting old and it was a little harder to hunt. So He was shy. I mean, most mountain lions are kind of skittish anyway, so.
Yeah, generally speaking, they're not looking for confrontations with humans.
Yeah, no. Coyotes, too, they're very, like, if they see you, they're just going to take off running. They're not about to square up with you at all, so.
That's true in LA. It's less true the further east you go.
What, you have gangster coyotes out there?
Oh yeah, like in the Boston area, the coyotes, which are now there, are they're about like a 10%-ish dog. And they have,
oh yeah, I was gonna say those are the hybridized ones.
Yeah, they have a dog's level of fear of humans, which is to say virtually none. So yeah, they're dangerous. In fact, actually, my parents live out in Massachusetts, and they once found a woman on the side of the highway who was a recent immigrant to the United States and was not used to the existence of coyotes, trying to feed one. And so my parents were like, "No, that's a wild animal. Please do not. That will bite you. Do not feed that. That is not a dog." I just
started laughing really, really hard because David B22585 says, "I'll be honest, Dapper, when you made that Renfield reference, I thought you were specifically referencing Dracula Dead and loving it for some reason." Love that movie.
No, not specifically, but just, you know, the character.
Renfield, you idiot! I love when he wakes up from he's like rising out of his coffin, he hits his head on a lamp. He's just like, oh, I was having a daymare.
As a general rule, if I reference Dracula, it's probably from the novel. But that's not always going to be the case. All right, here we go.
Right. Oh no, Tapioca Weasel is asking, are your parents still alive?
Well, those are the human adoptive parents that I got when I, came up in the Holocene and decided to integrate a little bit more into human society. Yeah. My actual biological parents are not still alive, obviously. Anyway, here we go.
Of death worldwide. We don't find fossils below that layer. Why? Well,
yes, we do.
Oh my
God, I hate this guy. It's just a lie.
Because we don't have a massive worldwide death and burial event to create those fossils.
And yet there they are.
Wow.
Weird.
Now, fossilization does not typically happen.
That's true.
That is true.
Fossilization requires a special set of circumstances to take place.
That is also true.
Why we don't find fossils forming today.
That is not true.
That's not true.
God.
I'm bad at geology, and even I know that.
So, Vishanti, have you ever heard of the phenomenon known as subfossils?
Subfossils.
Now, I do know
I can't say that I have.
Okay, now, I do know that while it implies the existence of DOM fossils, as far as I know, that is not a thing.
Okay, but what about, like, switch fossils?
Maybe. There might be some switch fossils out. Otherwise, what are all those subfossils going to do, really?
Right.
But anyway, yes, so subfossils are the remains of organisms that are currently partially permineralized and are in the process of permineralization. So if fossils weren't forming today, we wouldn't find subfossils. We find subfossils, therefore fossils are forming today. It's
wild guess here. Just stab in the dark. It's almost like Earth is still geologically active.
Right? Weird that. Yeah, it is almost like that.
Okay.
Yeah, so just the existence of subfossils, which are in some places actually fairly common, like Madagascar is just chock full of subfossils. That on its own indicates that, yeah, fossilization is in fact occurring today.
Origami Swami says subfossils, preserved remains of hoagies.
FSM says, isn't the definition of fossils it has to be so many years old? So by definition, it cannot be seen today. So yes, technically a fossil is a remains that is, usually the number is given is over 10,000 years old. However, subfossils are using that sort of other somewhat colloquial definition where it's permineralized, which technically fossils don't have to be permineralized, which is part of the confusion, right? Because we have a process called fossilization, which usually involves permineralization of the remains, where the actual physical biological remains are replaced by other minerals in a chemical process that leaves something in the shape of the original biological material. That process is usually called fossilization, and things that are undergoing that process are called subfossils. But then technically, you could have something that went through the fossilization process, but is too young to actually technically be a fossil. It's basically just a really confusing way to use the terms, and I wish that it hadn't come out that way, but that is sort of just how it is. And yeah, I don't have a good answer to why it is that way. Like, what idiot decided this is how we were going to talk about the ancient past and remains of organisms from the ancient past. But there it is. I mean, I could say things that are partially mineralized, but the common term is subfossil. So, yeah. Steve Areno says, aren't most politicians subfossils? At best. All right, here we go.
Now, if you go to the park, the Grand Canyon National Park, and read some of the park signs, they will say these fossils were the product of millions of years of oceans moving and advancing over the continent.
Will they say the fossils are that, or will they say that the fossiliferous layers are that? Because the fossils are the result of an animal that died, or in the case of trilobites, sometimes an animal that shed. And also,
welcome, Felony Ferret.
Felony Ferret. That is a great name, guys. If you're
that.
a channel member, send tetrapods to Felony Ferret for becoming a member at the tetrapod level. All right, here we go.
Felony Ferret. Is that going to be like a weasel or like an otter? Because I feel like Hood Nature would have quite a bit to say about that.
Ferrets are ferrets, though. That's
well, he has names like Felony Ferret.
Oh, okay. By the way, Felony Ferret, assuming that you're actually watching this video, which you might actually not be, because technically anyone who joins right now from any video will show up here.
Oh, they are.
Oh, they are? Oh, good.
In the side chat.
Oh, there. Yep, I see it right there. If you want to have access to the patron and member only Discord server, make sure to go to Discord and connect it to the account from which you grabbed this membership, and then you will be automatically added. And yeah, you don't have to be a subscriber to be a member. Although feel free to subscribe too. All right, here we go.
Up to 17 different times the continent rose and sunk, and oceans moved over the landscape. And the oceans, things living in there slowly died, slowly fell to the ocean floor, slowly covered up by sediment, particle after particle, slowly turning into fossils.
Well, okay, so the process of permineralization actually doesn't have to be all that slow. It can actually take place over the course of a relatively short period of time, geologically speaking. But there is a maximum deposition rate for most kinds of rocks. So the idea behind the Great Ages is not derived just from the existence of permineralized fossils. I can say that word. It's primarily from things like radiometric dating of igneous rocks between sedimentary layers, as well as things like the deposition rates of the rocks that are evident. Because again, if you can see a rock forming now, and you can tell how it formed, then an identical rock from the past, the only reasonable assumption is that it formed in that way. Now, that doesn't preclude catastrophic formation, but the thing is, we know which kinds of rocks are formed catastrophically and which ones aren't, and most of the ones in the Grand Canyon aren't. Notice I said most, because some are. So.
Now, if the oceans were responsible for making the fossil record,
in part, sure.
We probably should find fossils in today's oceans, right?
Oh my goodness.
You do. I mean, look, just talk to oil explorers who are exploring for oil in the ocean. They pull up fossils, relatively recent ones too, because the ocean floor is relatively not very old. You do find fossils in the ocean. I don't know what to tell you, man. That most of this guy's point has just been, shouldn't we find this? And then the answer is yeah, and we do. So, and then he's like, yeah, but we don't though. Like, okay, so your argument is just lie. Just flat out lie. Yeah, we find fossils in the ocean, guys.
Is it a lie if he's ignorant of it?
I mean, I don't know. So here's the thing, right?
I was going to say a lie is something that you personally know to be not true that you say anyway. Like there's intentionality behind it.
So I would say this. He might not be directly lying about the existence of fossils in the ocean. But
what he said is false.
What he said is false. And also, by saying it with some kind of pretended authority, he's at least lying about how well educated he is on this topic.
Mm-hmm.
So even if he's not being directly dishonest about the fossils, he is dishonestly representing himself, I would say. And because he knows that he hasn't looked this up. Because if he did, he would know that he's wrong. And so by presenting himself as an authority, despite knowing that he hasn't looked up this stuff, he's at least lying about himself, if not lying about the fossils. So I would say that
Programming with Baker, Coding 101, I think you're like a half hour behind the stream right now. We're not saying that Christians who make music that sounds the same, because striper is, I think, what you meant, not striker.
Oh, there's a lot of great Christian musicians out there.
But, I mean, there is a genre called contemporary Christian music, and it does all sound the same.
yeah.
And I can actually say that because I was a musician in a church that played contemporary Christian music.
By the way,
it literally all sounds the same.
I'm going to go out here and say that some of the best music that's ever been written was written by Christians. And I'm not saying that ironically.
Historically.
Yeah. Christianity
but listen,
has produced some of the
I
best
will
music.
say this with at least some authority because I do in fact have a music degree.
Nice.
So when I talk about like chord progressions and like the structure, like verse, chorus, bridge, chorus, stuff like that, no, it literally all does sound the same.
Yeah.
And there's been a shift. Like I could sit here and analyze contemporary Christian music from a like musician's perspective and talk about how even if there's a chord change or a key change, the structure of the music has gotten to where rhyming is just not really a thing much anymore. Like, a lot of hymns are built around rhymes because, you know, not everyone has access to all these musical tools in their home.
Mm-hmm.
But contemporary Christian, you could get it anywhere. You get it online, you can get it in the church, you can get it, you know, in the radio, whatever. They don't have to rhyme. And a large portion of it, in fact, does not rhyme. Verses don't rhyme. They're more concerned with a theological message than they are having people just remember the text, you know, over and over. So it's definitely not going to be as organic as like old hymns and stuff like that, or even folk traditions.
Or some chanting. There's some really good Christian chanting.
Yeah, or chanting. But like it's even different than gospel music, like the call and response format.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I used to be in a gospel choir, so I can talk to you about that one too.
Yeah. There's a lot of excellent Christian music. And by that I mean music by Christians and even about Christianity. However, contemporary Christian worship music is mostly trash.
It literally all was produced in like the same Nashville studio by the same people. It's just ugh.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yep.
We used to have a game, being in the rhythm section, most of our rhythm section musicians were classically trained. So we were really good at picking stuff up by ear, transposing on the fly, and we would have this little game where we would try to figure out which chord progressions were ripped off from which, like, 80s pop songs. We actually found quite a few of them. One of them had taken Bon Jovi, one had done, I think The Police, one had done, oh goodness, what was the name of it? We literally had a whole, like, roster of things where people had taken the exact same chord progression and just, like, transposed it a couple keys.
At least in Sister Act, they were transparent about it.
Yeah, right.
All right, here we go.
Yeah.
Few people realize this. By and large, we do not find fossils in today's oceans.
That's just not true. I mean, it's not the most common place to find fossils because, again, the average age of the crust around oceans is fairly low. But it's just not true that there's no fossils in the ocean. In fact, not that long ago, I read a paper about a plateosaurid that was found in the ocean, in a deep core of the ocean, along with a bunch of terrestrial sediment, interestingly enough.
We don't find things even fossilizing or turning into fossils in today's oceans.
Also false.
Where are all of our fossils?
It's just a bunch of false statements. And, like, I don't have much more to say other than that's just not true. Right? Because, like, if you're just going to come in and say, there are 5 lights when everyone can see there are 4 lights, what do I have to say to debunk you other than no? I see that Vishanti got that reference.
Of course I did.
Wait, here we go. Okay. I'm going to do a poll. All right, we're going to start a poll. How many lights do you see? Answers are 4 and 5. Don't disappoint me, guys. Oh, wait, no.
Oh, man. Here's why I got the band reference wrong. Programming with Baker Coding 101 is because striker was spelled as striken if you use an I. If you want to spell it as striker, you have to use an I.
So, guys, actually, I think right now I'm going to go grab myself a refreshed water because all this talking is making my poor dinosaur mouth a little bit dry. And so after a quick intermission, we'll be right back. So stay tuned, and I hope that you guys give me the right answer for how many lights there are. Vishanti, we'll be back in just a second.
Okay.
right, we are back. Welcome back, everybody. And before we get going, I want to read out a super chat from one Carrie Bronson for $10, who said there are 9 light bulbs with 4 steadily glowing and 1 flickering. So which answer is correct depends on the moment you ask the question. Who's gaslighting who now, Picard? Which is awesome. One thing I was always confused about with that one is that, like, so the series dealt a whole lot with Picard's trauma regarding his assimilation into the Borg. But apparently he just brushed off like a month-long torture session in a Cardassian dungeon.
Dude, compared to the Borg, that was probably a cakewalk.
I guess, but like
still. Dude's literally sitting there trying to turn him into like the Winter Soldier, and he's just like, whatever, man, I was part of the Borg. This can't even faze me right now. I wake up in cold sweats about being reassimilated, but this...
Who cares?
Amateur hour.
Alright, here we go.
Fossils found, typically, not in the oceans, but up on the land, in the continents. And
you know, it's almost like the ocean undergoes this process of, subduction and stuff like that, and that there's a lot of volcanoes under the water.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you would expect there to be fewer fossils, because they just don't last as long. Also, notice how he says fossils are usually found on land. Where do most of the humans live? Is it on land? Remind me, Vishanti. Where do the humans like to live?
Not in Talokan, that's for sure.
Yeah. I feel like most of the humans live on the land.
Because we need to breathe air, not water.
Yeah, and that's maybe one of the reasons why the land might be more heavily explored geologically, as a rule.
Goodness.
I'm just taking a drink of this water as if it were a drink trigger, even though it's just water. Well, I guess there's ice in there.
Let me get my Slurpee cup.
Water, but yeah.
why is that? Why don't we find fossils forming today?
We do.
Well, in the ocean, things that die in the ocean, what happens to them?
They fall down.
They float, they bloat, they get picked apart by scavengers, they get...
Yeah, for a little bit, and some of them do for a little bit, and then they fall. Like, this is basically like hey, what do your fish do when they die in your fish tank? Well, and the answer is, well, they float, right? But then what do you do? Like, what's the average human experience with dead fish? You have a fish tank, the fish floats up to the top, and then you go flush it down the toilet, right? Okay, well, here's a fun fact. Fish don't keep floating forever. If you were to let that fish sit there, it would sink eventually, because the decay gases that made it float in the first place would escape, and then it would sink. That's why not every single lake in the world is coated with a carpet of dead fish on top.
I really appreciate the side chat right now, because there's an entire discussion going on about whether or not octopus can do archaeology, and that we should teach them how to do it. I think it would save us a lot of labor.
Do they just get like free fish as a reward?
Yeah.
Nice.
Like, we'll protect them from some of their biggest predators, and they can help us, dig up fossils.
Nice. I like it. You could have like a whole family lineage of archaeologist octopus.
Yeah.
Like every few years you get a new generation of octopus archaeologists.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Eaten and consumed, even entire whale carcasses that may sink to the bottom of the ocean floor. Even down there, we have tremendous crabs and other crustaceans and hagfish and eels that consume even the very bones of whales very, very quickly.
Well, okay, so there's this thing called a bone worm, which is actually what tends to consume the bones of the whale pretty quickly. So there's that, right? The other things are actually usually chomping on little fleshy bits. But here's the thing. It's always been the case that there have been scavengers eating dead things. The question is, did something die and sink in an area where deposition rate is higher than decomposition rate? And the answer is sometimes yes. And that's all it takes. If the deposition rate is higher than the decomposition rate, which in some places it is, then you're likely to start forming fossils there. Vandalia for 1998 for $5 says, Picard got a much better reconstructive surgery than Seven did because he got his face back, but she didn't and still needed to recharge. Yeah, I was always a little bit confused about that whole thing. And then I think they like hand waved it away with like, yeah, but they wanted Picard to still have some of his like individuality intact or something so that he could act as like a liaison between the Federation and the Borg. And I'm like, I don't buy a whole lot of that, but whatever, it's fine. But honestly, I think it's because they wanted Picard to come back so that if you had missed that two-parter, you wouldn't be super lost, whereas Seven's whole backstory was that she was Borg from a young age. So they kept that aesthetic on her to remind you of the backstory. So yeah,
And a cat suit to remind you that the actress is hot.
Yes. That is, in fact, as far as I can tell, the only reason for the cat suit.
Same thing with T'Pol.
Yeah.
And Troy.
Yeah. Although eventually Troy did start wearing her uniform.
Mm-hmm.
After Chain of Command, which we were already referencing, she actually started wearing her uniform as her regular costume, which I appreciated more because it made more sense. The whole Troy dresses in pajamas never made much sense to me. Too Young to Feel This Old for $5 says, Octopus Archaeologist sounds like the Children of Ruin novel, which was excellent, guys. If you haven't read Children of Time and Children of Ruin, and you want to have an exploration of like how deep time can affect evolution and how humans might interact with very alien intelligences, even though they're not so alien as to actually be, not from Earth, check out Children of Time and then the sequel Children of Ruin. Anyway, here we go.
Queen Necra II says, at what point will the octopi realize they're essentially slaves, organize the cephalopods, overthrow humanity, and lead us towards Planet of the Squids? Well, if they start learning to breathe air, I will be more concerned.
But also, I mean, like, I'm thinking of this as like hey, if you do archaeology, we will give you fish. You may also just go find fish and crabs on your own and just not do archaeology. I'm not going to take your fish or crabs away.
Right.
It's just an option.
And I think they're smart enough to realize the whole quid pro quo thing, so...
Yeah. Not every time someone helps someone else in exchange for some good or service is it going to be an involuntary interaction.
And hey, maybe some of the fossils that they dig up they can use as little shields. You know how crabs or octopus will use like clamshells as little shields?
It would be pretty badass to have like an octopus who has like a dinosaur skull shield.
That would rule.
Alright, here we go.
We have specialized feeders that work their way up and down.
Feeders.
They have feeders?
Down the seafloor.
Vishanti, when are we going to get to see your feeders?
Hopefully soon.
Okay.
Column of mud, trying to pick apart and find any tiny piece of microscopic food that they can get a hold of. Things that die in the ocean today, they don't become fossils, they become food.
Mostly true. Mostly true. But it's the mostly part that's important there. Because it's not always true. There are parts of the ocean that are anoxic, in which case those animals don't exist. And all that exists are anaerobic bacteria, which don't really do a great job of getting rid of like hard mineral parts of animals like bones or shells. And are also extremely slow anyway. Yeah. I mean, that just happens. There are also places where the sediment just piles up too fast. And so, like, sure, animals can burrow through some sediment, but eventually they're going to get too deep for oxygen to actually get down there. And even though the water isn't particularly anoxic, deep sediment sure is. So, yeah. That's why, like, the easiest place to go find anaerobic bacteria right now is just go dig in your yard. Once you get deep enough, anaerobic bacteria are the predominant life forms down there. You might have to dig fairly far, but, I mean, it's still the case. You're sitting on a thin shell of oxygen here at the surface of the Earth.
I probably shouldn't waste the effort on this, but I'm going to do it anyway.
Uh-oh.
Programming with Baker Coding 101 says, now we say Asian, which is actually more problematic than Oriental. Spoiler alert. No, it's not.
Yeah,
thanks for playing.
It's really not. Here's the thing. The term Oriental is related to a pseudo-academic endeavor from the last few centuries that basically was just an exercise in exoticizing basically anything from the Middle East, further east than that, from the perspective of Europe, which there wasn't a similar Asianism movement. So there it is.
They're still like a half hour behind everything, so.
Yeah, you know.
By the time the stream is done, they might actually catch up to our squid pro quo. Thank you, chat. That was pretty epic.
That was pretty good. Also, I am liking that right now 4 is winning in the poll.
Sweet.
Exactly right. They don't become fossils, they become food. Likewise, a fox or a coyote that dies up here in the landscape, does it become a fossil?
Not normally.
What happens to it? It decomposes.
You think he knows that there are tar pits that are currently active, like the La Brea tar pits from the past? There's still predator traps like that. Like, that's a thing. I don't know if he knows that. Also, we're going to close this poll, and we're going to get our final results in here. So, virtually no one chose 5, which is good. So, how many likes do you see? 4, 56%. I like turtles, 40%, which I'm assuming are the people who mostly didn't get the reference. And
Or
then
they're just people who like turtles.
Well, yeah, that too. And 5 is at 3%. So to all of you who remember Chain of Command, which we've now referenced twice in very different reasons, I salute you. All right, here we go. God, I'm such a fucking nerd.
There's the one F-bomb, and it wasn't me!
That's true. Oh, I consciously made that decision.
A winner is me.
The Earth and the ocean is a pretty good recycler of things that die.
Yeah, it is pretty good. I agree with you. You know what pretty
And
good
he's
is?
sitting here complaining about like how most of the fossils are found on land and how we don't find things in the ocean, and he just turned around and went, well, the ocean flare recycles stuff.
Yeah, but also,
Bro.
Specifically, he's right. It is pretty good. It's not perfect.
It literally is, but it's like you can't say, oh, the ocean's good at recycling fossils. Well, we find fossils at the bottom of the ocean. Weirdo.
No, Denisovan is never going to be the new word for East Asian peoples. Denisovans were a different species of humans. That's dumb.
Found the conservative right-winger.
Oh, goodness. All right, let's keep going.
For something to become a fossil, it needs to be rapidly buried by a pretty good amount of sediment. So it's
Again, it needs to be buried more rapidly than it can decay, which in some places is quite rapidly. In other places, it's actually not all that rapid. Some of our best fossils actually come from slow deposition areas where the water was anoxic. So that's the result where we get most of our Lagerstätten is from anoxic, slow deposition. So we get things like Archaeopteryx or many of the famous feathery fossils from China or from various Lagerstätten that basically, because there's very little flow of water and the water doesn't mix very much vertically, the bottom of the water column ends up being very low in oxygen, which means most animals can't survive there, but any animals that fall in are likely to sink to the bottom. And then because, again, there's very little flow in or out, sedimentation is extremely slow, which means that it's going to be very fine grain, and it's going to be very good at preserving detail. And the anoxic conditions are what allows that organism to survive long enough physically, not obviously alive because it's already dead, but to physically survive as a structure long enough for the sediment to actually make those impressions. So, yeah, there are places where you might call that very rapid, but it's not very rapid by, the standards that you might think.
kept out of reach of scavengers and kept in an oxygen-free or anaerobic environment so it doesn't naturally decay and decompose. Now, those kind of conditions are not happening in the world around us, which is why we don't find fossils forming in today's world.
Hired sigh.
Mm-hmm.
During a flood, do we get the correct conditions for fossils to...
Funny how most fossils aren't from flood sediments then. Because here's the thing. You can recognize flood sediments. They're not like some kind of giant mystery, right? When floods happen, you tend to get conglomerates in a graded bed. Conglomerate is basically just a whole bunch of different rocks from various sources stuck together as clasts inside of a graded bed of sediment where the sediment size goes from large to small from bottom to top. That's not hard to recognize. That's actually pretty darn obvious if you know what you're looking for, which is basically if you've seen rocks. So...
Rocks don't exist.
Yeah, rocks are fake, just like glaciers.
It's just big geology.
Mm-hmm.
form. Pretty cool. So when you see an explosion within the fossil record, it's not the Cambrian explosion of life, rather it's the explosion of death. The layers below that, no fossils, because
Again, not no fossils, but okay.
that's part of the world that existed from creation until the flood. We have roughly 1,600 years of time the Bible gives us. We have life that existed from the very beginning, but what we don't have, kind of like today, is worldwide death and burial. So that great unconformity boundary, everything underneath that, part of the pre-flood world. No massive water erosion sweeping the planet, no massive death and burial across the world. Where that comes in, geologically and biologically, that's where we see the beginning of the flood. And then you could work your way all the way up to the top to that Kaibab line.
Is he saying that we don't have evidence for worldwide flood?
I'm actually not sure. This whole bit, I'm not sure what point he's trying to make here.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out what his point is.
Oh, also, we had a comment that Africans don't have Neanderthal ancestry. That's sometimes true. It's actually not true as a group. There are, in fact, small amounts of Neanderthal ancestry in some African populations. Man, we're getting a whole lot of paleoanthropology stuff wrong in the chat here. It's kind of weird.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. And yeah, I also from the live chat getting that Western Europeans don't have Denisovan ancestry. That's largely true. I don't know what the point of it is, but it is largely true.
Really, what's the point? Who cares?
I mean, yeah, Denisovan ancestry is largely restricted to places like Oceania, Australia, and Asia, and Central Asia. Yeah, and Neanderthal ancestry is mostly found in the Middle East and Europe, and in small pockets in Africa. But
smells like cope in here.
A little bit.
That you're standing on the rim, all those layers deposited during that flood, we believe. So the Cambrian explosion, the great unconformity, going hand in hand, the exact same place, the exact same time. Let's focus on one more thing about that exact feature, that exact layer. Going back again to this very same Tapete sandstone, where that erosional boundary is at and that sandstone layer begins. I love it. This is one of my favorite layers of the whole canyon.
Literally because you don't know what it is.
Right.
Let's remember from last time, this guy's explanation was like, I don't know, I guess flood. That's got to be it. And that's it. The only reason he likes this is because he thinks it's mysterious, and that's where he can stick in the action of God. It's a really dumb reason to like that layer.
Don't tell Danny that next month when he comes out, because our favorite layer actually is the red wall limestone, because we have a club at the Grand Canyon, and you can be part of it if you come on a river trip with us.
No thanks, nerd.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like fun. I like the red wall limestone because its existence absolutely precludes the idea that this all was laid down in a flood, because you don't get fine-grained limestone in floods. It's physically impossible unless there have been some experiments in which flocculation could be induced in limestone sediment, result in rapid deposition. But you know what we haven't found, to my knowledge, in any actual limestone anywhere in the entire world? Floccules consistent with rapid deposition. Instead, the maximum rate of accumulation is about an inch per 1,000 years for limestone, and that's under calm, warm, and I believe ever so slightly acidic ocean water. Kind of like the opposite of what a worldwide flood would be. So, yeah, that's why I love the red wall limestone. Because it's like, oh, hey, look, this exists. Guess it wasn't a flood then, because that's physically impossible.
I mean, their only counterpart is no.
Yeah, I mean, basically. Also,
sorry, counterpoint, not counterpart.
Also, interestingly, the red wall limestone is lower in density than most of the overlying rocks, which again, floods sort things largely by density and hydrodynamic qualities, which should mean that even if you did have limestone resulting from a flood, it should be at the top. And yet, there's the Coconino sandstone, just sitting right up there. Weird. Reverend Atheist says, for $4.99, whip out the chain. It's the chain I go get and beat you with until you understand who's in Rutten Command, Firefly forever. Hey, Firefly is great. I just don't normally have as many references to it. And that's in part because it's so much shorter, right? I really like Firefly, but there's just not as many references in everyday life. Because I mean, how much Star Trek has there been, Vishanti?
Oh goodness,
a
lot.
Hundreds of episodes, many of which were good.
Many of which were good. Some of which were not good.
Right? Yeah. Look, if there's one thing that Star Trek fans are known for, it's being ready to criticize Star Trek when it needs it.
Fact.
Yeah. But no, Firefly is fun times. I don't know, I just don't have as many occasions to reference it. Also, I probably haven't seen it as many times. There's that too. Anyway, here we go.
Little side note, that's for you, Danny. Anyhow, as you look here, this Tapete sandstone rock layer that we have down near the bottom, where the erosion begins, where the rock layers begin to stack up.
No, it's not where the erosion begins. It's literally where the erosion ends. If it's where the erosion began, then there wouldn't be anything there. Where the erosion began is gone, right? That would be the top of wherever the Great Unconformity started, way up there. Then it ended where the Tapete Sandstone begins. That's how erosion works. Erosion goes down, right? So if
It's
you're
just
standing,
eroded up.
yeah, if you're standing on the surface of an erosion feature, you're at where the erosion has got to by this point, not where it started. You would have to be in the air to be where it started. My goodness. No, Denisovans are not a subgroup of Neanderthals. Most analyses puts them as sister species, not as a group of Neanderthals. I mean, I don't know. I would just suggest that programming with Baker Coding 101, go look into the paleoanthropology literature. It's publicly available for the most part. Just don't use sci-hub to
Yeah, definitely
unlock.
don't use Sci-Hub.
Yeah, Sci-Hub, that would be illegal, and you would be taking food out of the mouths of the starving journal editors and publishers.
Who charge a lot of money to
Yeah.
publish works that, you might otherwise be able to read for free.
They need that $199 US from you in order to not be homeless and not starve, and to pay their kids' orphanage bills. And, yeah. Have to pay their kids' orphanage bills.
Yep.
All right, here we go.
Again, geologists have looked at this and they've determined that it was deposited by fast-moving water. Again, a flood.
That's not what that means, but okay.
Goodness.
So if we can determine that this Tapete sandstone was deposited by a flood event,
Which it wasn't, but okay.
right here where we see it, that tells us there was a pretty good-sized flood at the Grand Canyon in the past, right?
It would. If any of that were true, that's what it would indicate. Unfortunately, it's not. And here's the thing, right? Yeah, I know. You can find Andrew Snelling that's saying this is a flood. But Andrew Snelling, and I can say this with much more confidence.
He's a lying liar that lies.
Yeah, I can say that with much more confidence than I can say it about Nate Loper. Because I don't know what Nate Loper's background is. I don't know what his credentials are. I don't know what he's studied. Except youth pastoring. Because he looks like he's a well-studied youth pastor. He's got that down to a T. But, yeah, no, literally none of the scientists who are, not known liars are out here saying that this is just a flood. What they're saying is that it is fairly rapid deposition in an ocean on what was an erosion surface from glaciers. But of course, apparently glaciers don't exist, so we can't use those as an explanatory mechanism for why there are so many blasts from the underlying igneous and metamorphic rocks. All right, here we go.
Now, if we can map out and we can trace out that same rock layer across the entire state of Arizona, that's a pretty big flood, right?
I mean,
but it's not a global one.
So here's what's actually happening, right? Because I made sure to look a little bit more into this thing, like the things like the cryogenian period and snowball Earth and the thawing. Okay, after the thaw from snowball Earth, right? We have an interesting set of characteristics that has not occurred on Earth since, right? During snowball Earth, the most recent during the cryogenian period, basically the continents were worn down almost flat. Before that, we had gigantic mountains from both, mountain building from plate tectonics as well as volcanoes and whatnot. But the glaciers wore down the continents so that they were basically the flattest they've ever been since. As a result, when the glaciers melted, when we went out of an ice age and into a hothouse Earth period, oceans covered more of the surface of the globe than ever since. Almost all of North America was completely underwater. Almost the entire thing under shallow oceans. This is not something that's been happening since then because the continents have been going through a whole bunch of mountain building ever since then. And they aren't completely covered in glaciers almost from pole to pole, almost all the way to the equator. So we haven't had something since then that would do this amount of global erosion. So yeah, it's not surprising that you could trace ocean sediments across basically all of North America when you're looking at a time when basically all of North America was underwater because, again, it had been worn almost flat by glaciers. I don't know what to tell you, but there's evidence of glaciers, and they're basically global in extent, and then we start getting ocean on top of that, which is what you'd expect. And yeah, look, there are I'm giving what is currently the most common consensus view of this, right? There are some legitimate geologists who disagree with this conclusion, right? But what I'm saying is, the flood is not the most likely explanation for this. We have much better explanations that actually correspond to the, reality, like physically possible explanations that don't just require magic through and through. So here we go.
How many statewide floods do we typically see?
Virtually none. But again,
even if you find a statewide flood, it doesn't mean there was a global flood.
yeah.
I mean, newsflash, Arizona's not the entire planet.
It might be according to some people here.
It's too bad
Not
those
many.
people are not correct.
Yeah, and actually, I'm kind of exaggerating. Arizona isn't quite that parochial most of the time.
Yeah.
But what if I can tell you that we not only trace it across all of Arizona, but what if I told you it covers the entire four corners of Colorado, Utah, New Mexico, and Arizona?
I mean,
Okay, cool. It's not the whole planet. Try again.
yeah, it actually covers most of North America outside of like the Canadian Shield, if you're willing to have a broad definition for what counts as correlation.
And that is cool, but also not global. So
Yep.
weird.
Basically, the Canadian Shield was like the top part of the erosion, like the highest out of the water part after the cryogenian was the Canadian Shield, which is also why the Canadian Shield is basically just these underlying granites and metamorphics that you can see on this. That's what it's made of. It's why it's called the Shield, is because it's super hard. Because it's basically just like solid metamorphic and igneous rock that's just bare and was formed billions of years ago.
That's a really big flood. Now, what kind of floods do we see happening like that today? We don't.
That's
Oh my
true.
goodness.
We don't see those today. We also don't
Which
see
is-
them in the past, but
Again, it's like congratulations, but again, global flood not confirmed.
right. Because we do have places where there is no evidence of this deposition, even if it were flood deposition, which again, it's not.
But thanks to geology, thanks to oil and research and things like that, where they're drilling core samples, we actually can get a much bigger picture, much bigger understanding of where that deposited layer goes to. And
Until
again,
it
if you can
conflicts with
trace-
your bunk theory, and then you ignore it and say it's fake.
Yeah, there's a whole lot of that in creationism.
Like,
Which-
oh, I love geology, until it conflicts with every young Earth creationist thing I believe, and then it's not real. It's a conspiracy, and it's fake and not science. It's atheist.
Yeah, just like the conspiracy to deny Dr. Snelling his research permit for the Grand Canyon. Totally just a conspiracy. Has nothing to do with him, reportedly lying about sampling methods and then also trying to get research done that's already been done to death.
Mm-hmm.
And saying, hey, in addition to us not trusting you, this research has just been done so many times that, no, we're not going to let you destroy more of the Grand Canyon. Possibly deceptively, in order
Sorry,
to just redo this experiment again.
I'm sorry, I just had a bark of laughter because I saw the kilograms in the side chat said race car plate tectonics skirt.
Yeah, that is... So that's a reference to catastrophic plate tectonics, which is the more popular flood geology model for the flood, is that the tectonic plates of the Earth were just driving around at, 80, 90 miles an hour if you're from the US, which is, over 100 kilometers an hour. Which, no, on its own, even without the accelerated decay that those same creationists also propose, that would boil the oceans of the water of the Earth many times over. An ark is not going to take care of that. Sorry.
Mm.
Build an ark out of wood so that it may become ash, Noah.
Cover
Thank
it in
God.
pitch.
Right.
Like, yeah, that's not flammable.
So that you're basically just inside of a burning wood held together with napalm. That would be fun.
Out the Tapete sandstone, you can get an understanding of just how big that flood was.
Not
Now, what if I were
global.
to tell you, not only do we see the same Tapete sandstone covering Arizona, covering the four corners, but covering the entire continent?
Okay,
that's
still not global.
Still not global, but that's also not the entire continent. And you remember that time that I was like, it doesn't really cover like the Canadian Shield. You notice what isn't in this map? Yeah, the Canadian Shield. Weird. It's almost like I looked into this even just a little bit, which is all it takes. Just look into it just a little bit. Just a tiny bit. That's all.
This shows you the yellow is a geological mapping of the coverage of that Tapete sandstone across
Puppy noises.
North America. It actually
I
goes
hear a
further up into
puppy.
Canada.
You didn't hear the puppy?
No.
I think she's on her way outside. I heard the puppy. Maybe it's not coming through on my mic. Guys.
Tiana in the side chat says, that's a nice model you have there. Be a shame if it had a massive heat problem.
Right? Alright, we're starting the poll. Here we go. Can you hear the puppy? And by puppy, I mean, like, old lady, because, quite honestly, this dog is...
All dogs are puppy.
Yeah. But also, this dog happens to be an old lady. An old lady who likes to pretend that her back leg is paralyzed so that she gets more attention. But then when, like, treats are involved, suddenly her leg is just fine.
I miss my old lady cat. I actually had a dream about her last night, about my cat.
Good
That
dream?
I had somehow managed to clone her, and that
Oh.
I had... Apparently, I had a new kitty Boots, and it was her, and I knew it was a clone, so it was only going to live for like a short time. But I was just like, oh man, all of my friends, I'm so glad you had the opportunity to meet my cat. Here she is.
Okay, nice.
And I woke up and I'm like, aw.
Yeah. Well, at least it was a nice dream.
Yeah, it was nice. It was like I got to kind of be with her again, so I'm like, alright. It was mostly pleasant, so.
By the way, 95% of voters were able to hear the puppy noises, so they came through.
Huh, okay.
Alright, here we go.
Canada. You can actually trace it all the way up into Greenland.
Yeah.
Now, this
Great.
is a continent-wide, fast-moving water event.
Actually, I'm pretty sure you can't trace it into Greenland, but you can trace it into Europe.
In other words, a flood, right?
No. No.
No, not it.
A sea transgression. A flood is an event that happens over the course of, like, days or weeks or even hours. A sea transgression is an increase in water levels in the ocean that takes place over, like, centuries or millennia or more. These are not the same thing. Floods are short-term transient events. Sea transgressions are long-term, slow changes to the actual coastlines. These are not the same thing, not even a little bit. For one thing, sea transgressions tend to be pretty darn low energy because it's like, you know, the ocean rising in level by like, you know, centimeters per century in most cases. Whereas floods are like, you know, the water level rising by several meters per hour.
Right. John B. in the side chat says, imagine an extensive sandstone forming along a continental shelf. I mean, it could be a shoreline process, could be continent-wide fast-moving event.
Yeah. But here's a fun thing. Fast-moving deposits are actually distinguishable from low-energy deposits. Neat, isn't it?
Very cool.
Yeah.
But wait, there's more.
Uh-oh.
Oh, there's
It gets
more.
even bigger than that, my friends.
Yes, we
Oh,
know.
okay.
It goes over large sections of all of the continents because of this thing called supercontinents.
Not only can we trace the same Tapete sandstone across the
Well, it's called different things once you get too far away, but I mean, like I said, if you have a broad definition for correlation, then yeah, you can kind of trace it.
United States, that very same layer of rock can be traced all the way across North Africa.
That's less true. You can find similar rock from the same time period caused by the same basic kind of deposition. It's less accurate to say that it's definitely the same layer.
Even if, let's just give this one to him for some reason, that's not proving a global flood, that's proving the supercontinents.
Yeah. Also, here's a fun thing. So, see how on Figure 2 and Figure 1 we have this word mega sequence? That's a made-up creationist buzzword.
Oh!
Yeah, that's not a real thing. Only young Earth creationists talk about mega sequences. And basically
Courtesy of, is that Dennis J. Warner or Warner?
I think it's Werner. W-E-R-N-E-R, I think.
Dennis Warner. Okay, I'm trying to zoom in on it.
Well, it's fuzzy even at where I'm looking at it, like, with full resolution, full screen. So, yeah, I'm pretty sure it's... Or maybe... Might be Davis.
Davis? Okay.
Possibly Davis J. Werner.
Huh. Okay. Let me.
But yeah, so basically, the idea of the mega sequence is just this idea that creationists kind of thought up one day that, like, hey, because there are similar depositional environments at different points in the geological column across the world, we can just kind of call them all the same thing. And then without really having to provide much in the way of evidence or a model, we can just pretend that that's evidence of a flood.
Oh, what a shock.
Yeah.
My very limited Google research on Davis Werner, it comes from the International Conference on Creationism, from ICR, and he's got a little publication, I use that very loosely, called Use of Sedimentary Megasequences to Recreate Pre-Flood Geography.
Fun times.
And it says, let's see, David J. Werner, this was published in, what year? 2018? So in 2018, Davis was an undergrad at a community college in Texas with the goal of earning a degree in geology and has worked at ICR since 2015.
Oof. ICR too.
Oof.
Look, when it comes to the big organizations, ICR is the bottom of the barrel by a long shot. If like you take like the holy trinity of creationist organizations, right? It's AIG, CMI, and ICR.
Mm.
CMI is by far the least dumb of the three. By a long shot, actually. They are the most likely to not lie. They're the most likely to do things like, I don't know, support important public health measures, which is a big deal, you know? Now, don't get me wrong. I mean, they do still lie through their teeth about a whole bunch of stuff, but whatever. They do it the least. AIG is a big step down from CMI, and virtually everything they put out is nonsense. Like, remember that time that we read that Gabriella Haynes paper?
Oh, that was painful.
She's an AIG person. CMI probably wouldn't write something quite so dumb.
So I found a link to a CMI page where Timothy Clary and Davis J. Werner have another little thing going up there. Timothy Clary has a linked bio on this, but Davis J. Werner it does not. So I don't know what his academic credentials are, if there are any at the moment.
By the way, speaking of Timothy Clary, if you have access to my early access videos, I have an entire series in which Brian Thomas and Timothy Clary just lie about dinosaurs for like an hour, and I correct them. So if you want to see me take on Timothy Clary, it's out there. You just currently would need early access. But if you don't have early access, you can wait until, like, I don't know, February or something.
Yeah, it's like way ahead.
Yeah. Look, you get a lot for that, like, $1 that it costs to get early access to the channel.
Mm-hmm.
All right, here we go.
It goes up through parts of southern Israel, through southern Jordan. And in southern Jordan, there's actually a sandstone city called Petra. Anybody been there before?
I haven't... Oh, wait, no, we have to ask.
Oh, we gotta do the question.
All right, so first we end this poll. And let's see, what was the results? Okay, can you hear the puppy? 94% yes, 5% no. 52 votes. And of course, Landon Knoll just typed in that AIG is a set of AIG appendages with of course, the eggplant emoji. Because that's what that is, it's an eggplant.
Yep.
Actually, I once sent...
Does not have any alternate meanings.
Actually, once sent a friend an eggplant emoji in response to the question of what I was cooking. And then my friend actually forgot that the eggplant emoji is actually supposed to literally be an eggplant, which is what I was literally cooking. Yeah, so this is like, no, this is the the actual literal use of this. I'm making roasted eggplant. Okay, so have you been to Petra? Yes, no, and you know what? We're gonna change it up a little bit. I don't have time to type in Arabic, but whatever. I'm gonna make it simple. Yeah. Yeah, okay, look. What I would expect. I basically just typed it into Google Translate because I don't have time to actually sit here and try to type in Arabic. I'm gonna put in, I like turtles in Arabic for the reason that Petra was in fact an Arabic-speaking area, even though their official court language was Aramaic. And basically, I just double-checked with the translation from Google Translate. It's like, is that how I would say it? And the answer is yes, it is how. say it, so it's reasonable.
What is the Arabic option? I like turtles.
Well, I mean, it's the only option in Arabic, but it's أحب أصلاحث. Oh, sorry, asalahith. Asalahith.
Okay.
Turtles is salahith, and turtle would be Hufa. Yeah, Arabic is annoying with plurals. If you ever want to have to memorize a separate plural pattern for virtually every noun, learn Arabic. There are exceptions for nouns to do with humans, which usually get regular endings, like un or in for masculine and at for feminine nouns to refer to humans, but still, that's not most of the nouns. Anyway, here we go.
Okay, Petra, carved out by the Nabateans over 2,000 years ago.
That's true. Congrats, Nabateans.
You
I
may
could
have
say
seen
this
it if
in
you were
Hebrew.
Oh,
Ani ohev tzavim.
there you go. Yes, okay, look. It is the case that there have been papers published with the word megasequence that were not from creationists. It is no longer a term that is in current use, though. It's sort of like when creationists use the word pongid. At this point, that's a word that creationists are using to confuse people and to direct you to creationist groups, because no one is still using the word pongid. So it's not technically true to say that they made it up.
studied anything about archaeology in the Middle East or ever traveled there before, or if you've ever seen Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
That's definitely
Well,
where
the
I get
end of-
my history from.
Indiana Jones, yeah, the best place
Yeah.
to get it. The best place to get it.
That's how I learned the Ark of the Covenant was a face melting, like flesh eroding magic chest with ghosts.
Yes, that is what you just get that right out of the Bible.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
And also, I believe it was it the Embiid who asked, how do you say I like turtles in Klingon? The thing is, I don't think there's a word
Oh, that
for
was
turtle.
Icarus.
Oh, was it Icarus? Oh, apparently there is. Okay, well, this is a new word for me. I didn't know there was a Klingon word for turtle. It's lakshiv. So I like turtles would be. So you don't have to put a plural marker on there. If you want to, you can. So lakshiv viparchat or lakshiv me viparchat. Lakshiv viparchat could be plural, or it could mean I like this turtle, or not this turtle. I like a turtle or the turtle. But it could also just as easily mean I like turtles. Or it could mean I like the turtles. Or some turtles. Actually, not some. Yeah, I like the turtles, or I like turtles generally. Lashiv me would make it definitively plural. But yeah, Klingon does not have obligatory plural marking on nouns. However, if the verb prefix does need to agree with the actual meaning, so if you use a plural verb prefix, then whether or not you mark the noun as plural, it is understood to be plural. That is not an optional verb agreement. Here we go.
That movie where they're going to get the Holy Grail, that part might be fake, but the stuff.
Yeah,
It might be.
It might be. Yeah, that's maybe. Who knows, guys? Maybe, Indiana Jones is a real archaeologist who just absolutely ignores all of archaeological ethics.
That should be in a museum in its country of origin, right?
Yeah, no, that's not what he means. Also, like that time in Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull where, like, they're being chased?
I don't recognize that that's a movie.
Okay, well, similar things happen at the beginning of other Indiana Jones movies. Basically, anytime he's in a place where the locals are chasing him, that's because he's directly stealing from them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's what that is. In order to do archaeology in a place, you have to get permission from the people who currently live there, because it's their stuff otherwise.
That should be in a museum in its country of origin.
Look, even if the country of origin wants to donate it to a foreign museum, that's fine.
Yeah, and if you happen to have stole artifacts from a place and that country says, hey, we'd like that back, you should give it back to them.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking at you, most of Europe.
Yeah. Indiana Jones is the worst archaeologist, basically.
Yeah, he's real bad.
Yeah, in fact, by most standards, he would actually be less of an archaeologist and more of a looter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Well,
and like the side chat says, in other words, an early 20th century archaeologist.
No, he's worse than most of those.
Or I would say early to mid 19th century.
Yeah, he's actually worse than most 20th century archaeologists.
He's a Tomb Raider.
Yeah, see, yeah. Most archaeologists didn't actually just shoot the people they were looting from.
Yeah.
Whereas he has a tendency to do that.
Hmm.
Like, oh no, I'm trespassing in this temple and the locals are trying to kill me. I guess I better murder them first and then take their stuff. That doesn't make it better. Alright, enough dunking on Indiana Jones. He should not be taken seriously as an example of how to do archaeology. Ron Wyatt existed. Oh. I've been once again reminded today of the existence of Ron Wyatt. Thank you, Savage Cobra. Thank you, Vishanti, who sent me a 2.5-hour documentary about Ron Wyatt.
You keep giving me psychic damage with these guys. I have to return it.
I mean, I'm taking the psychic damage right along with you, though.
Right. Oh, man. Remind me, what do I roll to resist psychic damage?
Usually that's going to be a wisdom save, or sometimes maybe an intelligence or charisma save, but usually wisdom.
I use my d20 for that, right?
Yeah.
Oh, 4! Yikes.
Oof, yeah, no, you definitely took the full psychic damage on that one.
Yeah, I took that one, man. Woo! And before y'all laugh at me in the chat, it's because I'm used to playing like White Wolf and Vampire the Masquerade games, so we're just over there in D10 land all the time.
Yeah, just roll 40 D10s, it'll be fine.
Yeah, God.
What we're going into is a real-life location. We call it the Treasury Room of Petra. And Petra...
Yes, by the way, some of that film was in fact filmed in Petra on location. George Lucas likes to film... George Lucas and Steven Spielberg like to do on-location kind of stuff.
...is carved into the very same Tapete sandstone equivalent.
Yeah, when you say equivalent, it kind of gives away the game.
Equivalent?
Yeah, it's equivalent.
So it's not Tapete sandstone?
No, it's not. It's sandstone from about the same time and a similar depositional environment that was caused for about the same reason, which is, the retreat of the glaciers at the end of the Cryogenian. It's not actually the Tapete sandstone,
that we have here at the Grand Canyon. And looking at this map...
It is super cool, though. Go look up Petra, guys, when you're done with this show. It's really awesome.
Go back to the other one. Looking at this map, the very same Tapete sandstone equivalent directly underneath us tonight. Did you know that you have the same layers of the Grand Canyon underneath your house?
I mean, I did. I don't know about these people.
So, Hawk Skull told me to roll 70 10s, passes an 8.
Rough.
Yeah, I definitely failed. In fact, I think I critically failed. This is a messy bestial failure here on my part.
Roll a bunch of those ones.
Woo!
Yikes. Any exploding dice?
Woo! Okay.
But any exploding dice?
No.
No? Oh, oof, rough. Carrie Bronson for $5 says, it's an intelligence save here since you're actually inspecting and rejecting bad ideas and obfuscation. Well, either way, if you roll a 4 as the face-up number on your D20, chances are
yeah, I mean, it's just not going to go well for me.
Yeah, because I mean, even if you got a +7, what, you
got
to an 11?
That's
still probably not enough.
Yeah.
Actually, you know what? There's a D20 system that I kind of like that comes from Modifius Games, where you add a couple stats together to get the pass number, and if you roll below that on the D20s, and it counts as success, and then you roll a few D20s depending on the test and what resources you expend. They use that for their Star Trek Adventures game. I think that's a clever.
You see, I could get down with that because that's closer to World of Darkness games.
Yeah,
where you
it's
have
a lot more similar.
Fail pass ratio that you have to get over.
Mm-hmm. And also they'll do things where you can do group checks where the group has to get this many successes. Mm-hmm. And they all get to roll those dice that go into a whole pool of successes and failures. And I don't know. I think the Star Trek Adventures has a pretty good
that's cool.
main mechanic for resolving pass-fail situations. And also it has degrees of success built in, which I also like. So anyway, here we go.
Kind of a cool concept. Last year, I was actually out in this area. Flew out to Chicago last year. Was doing some studies up in Wisconsin, actually, where we can trace out the same Tapete sandstone equivalent way over there in Wisconsin. Anybody ever been up to a Baraboo area?
Is he now just going to start listing places where he can find sandstone of the same age as the Tapete sandstone? There's going to be a lot of places. I'm not sure if it's supposed to be impressive. I'm going to end this poll real quick because it was just a simple "Have you been to Petra" poll.
Anybody been to Devil's Lake State Park?
Nope.
If you go up there, there's a great trail that goes along.
Oh, okay. By the way, no is 75%. So 75% of my audience have not been to Petra. 14% said I like turtles, but they did it in Arabic, which I appreciate. And then 10% of you have been out of 49 votes. I'm actually surprised that it's that high. I didn't think that it was a very often visited place because it is pretty remote. It's out of the way. Like, it's not going to be like, oh, you know, during my trip we took an hour or two to get to Petra. That's going to be that's the day. You're spending the day getting to, being at, and leaving Petra.
The left-hand side of that lake, and you're rising up along the ridge, and you're going through the Great Unconformity.
Cool.
That physical erosional feature is found right there as well.
It's almost like there were also glaciers there because the glaciers were covering, what was it? Oh, right, basically the entire world. Weird. Huh. And how do we have evidence of the glaciers? Oh, right, because we have the different clasts as drop stones from the glacier of very different size without any significant grading, which basically only comes from either landslides, which we don't have good evidence of, and what's the other one? Yeah, glaciers. Pretty much it. Huh. Weird. In fact, if you want to see that kind of thing happening right now, we have a bunch of glacial boulders and also smaller rocks from all over the place, just dumped in places. Go check out places like, you know, the northern United States or southern Canada, where the most recent Ice Age glaciers retreated, leaving behind a bunch of random boulders from all over the place, further north. You can do the same thing in large parts of Europe and Asia. I mean, a lot of people live in places where they can just go see what this is like, an identical situation. Not quite identical, because, you know, where you're looking is still primarily on land, but still, you can see how those boulders got there right now by just going outside in many places.
And in fact, just recently, Jay Siegert, who's coming out soon, and Eric Hovind, who is also coming out soon.
Oh, God.
Hey! Oh, buddy.
There's a great name to add in.
That's
Eric
a lineup for it.
I mean, look, Eric Hovind is leagues ahead of his father, but that's not saying a whole
That bar's
lot.
in hell, my friend, so...
You basically, if you didn't drive a bus of children to child abusers, then you get to be better than Kent Hovind. I'm going to go out on a limb and say everyone in my audience has at no point in their life ever driven a bus full of children to people who were about to abuse them. So, you know. I'm also going to go ahead and go out on a limb and say most of my audience never spent almost a decade in prison for the dumbest version of tax evasion.
Yeah, that would put him in the Boviday family. Hoviday, sorry.
Boviday, yes. And the thing is, like, the tax evasion charges that he was on were like super dumb. Like, this wasn't like clever accounting or anything. This is just like, I just didn't file any taxes.
He just didn't want to pay taxes. I mean,
yeah.
Hey.
Like, there was no clever tricks. It was just like, I'm just going to not follow this law. Oh, okay. Sure.
Yeah. Because he's literally, if he's not already, he is basically a hair away from being a softset.
Oh, he's a softset. He just doesn't like the term.
Yeah. He's traveling in his vessel.
Goodness.
And those pesky road pirates pull him over.
Yeah, he's traveling. He's not driving, because that implies commercial activities. And as we all know, Kent Hovind does not sell anything or buy anything. His ministry does.
Yeah, does he even leave his compound?
He does. He leaves his compound occasionally to violate his restraining order that is in place against him. Yeah.
That's right.
Because on more than one occasion, he has decided to violate the restraining order in regards to Cindy Lincoln, his ex, who is currently a victim in the ongoing jury trial over his...
Someone in the chat says, in response to your driving a bus to children abusers, Liebenswürdig Schussel, I hope I did that somewhat justice, says they drove a bus to a Catholic summer camp.
Okay, so maybe. Okay. But also, did you then let a convicted child abuser sleep alone in a house with only one bed with a child who's under your care?
Can we not?
Yeah, no, it just gets worse and worse when you get Kent Hovind. And also, we're about to wrap it up anyway, so Vishanti, instead of talking about...
Let's end this on a positive note, maybe?
Alright, well, look, this is I like the blue color on this map of the United States.
Glaciers exist and this guy's full of it.
Yes. And also,
Yeah.
hey guy, if you're gonna have rock formations that go outside the U.S., maybe just also include like Mexico and Canada. Just
America.
because like that's not ocean when you get up past like Montana, right?
That's just a void.
Right? You just fall off the map. There's nothing.
It's like in that 1408 movie where it's just his hotel room and then this void on the map.
Right. Yeah, that's not how America works, guy. There's land out there.
It's to Americans.
Well, not to this American, okay? I've been to some of those places that are not on the map. They exist, I promise. All right, guys. Vishanti, do you have anything you want to announce?
Glaciers exist. I can
Yes.
announce that. Yeah.
Well, also, look, your YouTube channel, which I'm sure eventually will have more content.
Yes, it actually will. I
Okay.
got all of my rig moved into a better space. It's
There you
much
go.
more conducive to recording now. I'm very excited.
Awesome. Well, that's linked in the description, as well as Vishanti's Amazon wishlist.
Yay!
So if you want to get
Somebody
Vishanti,
out there, please get me a rice cooker
yeah,
so
there
I
you
can
go.
feed myself.
There's a rice cooker on there. There's a few other things. So there you go.
My old
Also,
one broke.
that's rough.
Yeah.
Also, my wish list is on there, as well as Bent Hoven's wish list. Because his wish list stays on there because he's my most regular co-host.
Mm-hmm.
And also,
And with Bent 100 is going to be coming soon to
Yes.
a Dapper Dinosaur channel near you.
the 100th episode of Kent with Bent is currently expected on the 3rd of January.
Yeah.
So look forward to that.
It's gonna be very cool.
Next Tuesday is going to be a Matt with Maddie. We're going to continue
Woohoo!
our dive into a Matt Powell speech.
Not woohoo.
I tell you, Matt with
He's-
Maddie
he's-
takes the most out of me of any of the Tuesday shows. Because
Matt's
while
just so dumb.
he's dumb, I can't say he's quite as bad as Ken Hovind, but that just might not be. That might just be because he hasn't lived long enough to have done as much shitty stuff as Ken Hovind.
I was going to say he just doesn't have the time behind him.
Right. I think he's well on his way to equaling Kent Hovind's awfulness, but he hasn't got there yet. But still, it takes the most out of me because he's just the dumbest. Matt Nyler gives him a run for his money. That's Raw Matt. And no, I'm not doxing him. He publishes and still has his name on his books all over the place. He's still hawking. But yeah.
Richter's gonna grift.
Also, I am thinking that our next Matt video might just be Matthew McClatchy, who is still a young Earth creationist, but is far less insufferable, basically. He's barely tolerable in some cases. So anyway, guys, that's what's coming up on Tuesday. On Thursday, we should be starting a new series in terms of uploads. So double check to see what's coming up. Yes, we are getting Bad Reasons Birds Aren't Dinosaurs, Part 1 of 3. So for those of you who haven't seen this, because maybe you're not channel members or patrons, this is my dissection of a David Menton speech that he gave, I believe, during the pandemic at the AIG conference room or stage or whatever you call it, right? And I actually hadn't originally planned to do this because while I had watched it live, and you will get to see my live chat from their stream, Aaron Ra and Darren Neisch teamed up to do a really excellent and very detailed takedown of it. However, I got numerous requests to cover specifically this speech. And so, I mean, eventually I was like, all right, if people really want to see my take on this and they're not satisfied with, Aaron Ra and Darren Neisch taking a look at it, especially with Darren Neisch there, who's an actual vertebrate paleontologist, then okay, I'll do it too. So, I think it's a pretty good series, although I still feel like it's a little redundant, but hey, that's what everyone wants. That's what I'll give you. And then on Saturday, I don't know, we might be doing this again because we still have 23 minutes of this guy left.
And we really, at the end here, tried to get through a big chunk of it, so...
Yeah, well, I expect, or at least I hope, some of it is going to just be preaching that we can kind of just skip.
Yeah.
Because here's the thing, guys. If you want to go be a Christian, go do it. You know how.
Basically.
Yeah. I don't need someone to tell you how on this channel. You guys can figure it out. And if you don't know how, it's really easy to figure out how.
Yeah, there's no shortage of people out there trying to tell you.
Christians are not shy about telling you how to become one. To be fair, most religions that you can convert to aren't shy about telling you how to if you want to.
And even if you don't want to.
Well, yeah, there is that. Anyway, guys, thank you very much. I hope to see all of you on Tuesday for Matt with Maddie with, frankly, Maddie on Twitter, or, Sign Side Up, as you know her channel name. And bye. Thanks for watching, but before you go, I just want to say a special thank you to my channel members and my patrons, especially those pledging $20 or above. Bob Knob, Work in Progress, Van Tovent, Tapioca Weasel, Denny5252, Ian Chen, Landon Knoll, Mabbity Babbity, McSpooks, Sphincter of Doom, The Venerable Bede, Elleran Teller, and Pat L. Dennis. As you probably know, YouTube is a very volatile platform, and from month to month my income on the channel can swing wildly. But the people you see on screen are directly supporting, so that I don't have to worry too much about that, and the channel can keep going as it is, and perhaps even improving. If you'd like to join this team, there are links below to join the channel or in the description to join the Patreon. The Patreon starts as low as $1 a month, and the channel memberships start as low as $1.99 a month. On Patreon, you can even get a discount for pledging annually. If you do decide to pledge, you'll get access to an exclusive Discord server just for channel supporters, as well as early access to all of my pre-recorded videos, often up to 2 months in advance. Higher tiers will unlock even better perks. Now, if the annual or monthly pledge isn't right for you, but you still want to support the channel, there is a merch store down in the description, as well as an Amazon wishlist, just for me. And if financial support isn't something you can or want to do, then if you still want to help out the channel, please just like and share these videos and make sure you comment on them. It really helps the channel out. Thanks again for watching.